So if I was a finance director of a network and I'd heard about self-diagnosis and self-healing, perhaps I'd say, well, okay, I'll let you spend a little bit more on the equipment and on the training because then I won't have an ongoing expense. I mean, does self-diagnosis and self-healing exist? I mean, is it a myth or is it something that...
It's getting there. It's getting there. So if you look at the NEMs, these guys are starting to allow much more information to be extracted from their devices, along the delivery chain, whether it's in the customer premise at the set-top box or from the DSLAM or switches and routers kind of further back in the network. There's still a bit more work. There's still quite a lot of work to be done actually in what you then do with that data. Okay, so these guys make network equipment. They're not so experienced in the analysing that and then okay, here's what the problem is and here's what we need to do to solve that. So that's where a T&M company needs to sort of come in and
so because the chips are so relatively cheap, let's say, they've got the cleverness to develop the data and send it somewhere.
Exactly.
But then what happens?
Yes. So we found that the self-diagnosis portion is much simpler than the self-healing portion. Of course, turning control, turning an automated control over to the system itself. These sorts of systems have never really truly come into play, even in prior service introductions. Self-diagnosis, again, yes. Self-healing, not so much. Well, one good example of a self-healing process that's in existence today is the dynamic spectrum management that we find for DSL services. And that has become relatively well accepted at this point, and you see a lot of deployment for that. But for things like IPTV, because of the complexity involved, we see that the process for healing is still very much manually done. In particular because of having to understand the MPEG streams separately from the IP streams, separately from the analog equipment. So, all these complexities don't have yet, there isn't a capability yet developed for the true self-healing process to be widely deployed.
We are seeing some network manufacturers that do have switching capabilities, not only on the IP when they see IP impairments to switch over to a different feed, but even down at the program level. So say HBO starts getting some kind of degradation, we've seen systems out there that are starting to switch. So we're seeing with the video networks being built, they usually built a master head end, and they'll have a backup master head end that basically duplicates exactly what that head end. Right. It'll be in a different part of the country.
So it's redundancy.
But we've seen it only switch. Normally you see a switch maybe from a whole, optical feed, but they're even switching down at the program level. Right. And on that same effort, we've been working with some of the network manufacturers, both at the switch level, as well as going all the way out to the CP folks, to somehow integrate our information into theirs. So it's kind of it's hard to expect them to put our capabilities onto their system because it's pretty expensive to do what we do, and it's a lot of software. It's going to take a lot of processing. It's going to take a lot of memory. But what we can do is say we see this event, or we can set alerts from an S&P. So if we can see a certain event that we can send them an S&P trap, they can then act on it. And so I think that's the direction people are looking at going. I know there's still ways out, but I know there's some efforts moving in that direction. So I think that's what the operators want. The operators want that self-healing. They want the self-diagnosis.
But that does exist in the satellite industry. You have, in the uplink station, you have normally a redundancy. You have a master and a slave, and they switch over automatically.
So it's automated substitution rather than healing. I mean, you can't actually put it right.
No, you can't.
Yeah, you can't. Healing is...
You substitute it, is what you do. Yeah.
That's a reset button, right? That's how they heal.